Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. For anybody that stumbles along, this is just my diary of how to deal with and field a world that is this big of a disaster without losing my fucking mind. So, I'm going to put a couple of things up on here because I have some fucking questions. Now, at some point, you might hear my name yelled on a monitor, and it's going to sound like, Kelly! And it scares me every time. It's like a can of biscuits, is going to bust, but it scares you. I'm with my lady this morning. But, let's get into it. If you've never heard of Dr. Royal Raymond Rife, and you are not at least familiar with Rife frequencies, then you've probably not been paying attention to things that you should be. When my dad was diagnosed with Glioblastomas, I had known about Rife technology or Rife frequencies because I listened to Rife frequencies and I listened to solfeggio frequencies every night when I go to bed. And they started using a device called an Optune. And when I heard of this device, I'm going, oh, so is that like Rife frequencies? And this guy was like, yeah, it's very, 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 it's like Rife technology, right? So I go and I actually research what happened to Dr. Rife after he came up with Rife frequencies. I was not aware that his life was fucking destroyed and he was talked to like a piece of shit. I didn't know his life was ruined and he was made to be a quack, because that's what happens to everybody when they know what the fuck they're talking about. Listen to what this jackoff has to say about him.
If you haven't heard of Dr. Royal Raymond Rife, this is someone who's been referred to by those who personally knew him as a genius. He was a scientist and inventor, and starting in the 20s, he began building a large and very complex microscope capable of magnifying objects 31,000 times, compared with the maybe 1,700 times that were available on standard microscopes in the 30s and 40s.
The reason you haven't heard of Royal Rife is because he was a crank. Unfortunately, the guy, even though he may have been very smart engineering-wise, etc., went down a rabbit hole that led nowhere. But just like a lot of cranks from times past, phrenology, etc., things like that, they tend to have a second life within the alternative science, alternative medicine community. No good, bad idea goes to waste. It's a good way to review like how science actually works, because it gives an example of what happens when it goes wrong. So new discoveries, like let's say something like a fantastically powerful microscope, were real, those kind of discoveries don't come out of nowhere. There's always a trail. There's multiple different scientists working on different aspects of the basic science, and then by the time the technology is basically ready to be invented, multiple people usually are sort of converging on it at the same time. Rarely does one researcher get way out ahead of the pack, really far ahead of the worldwide scientific community, where they're just making these amazing breakthroughs. Usually those kind of advances are more incremental. But let's say that he did get 2 or 3 steps ahead. He's working away in his lab and he hit upon something, and then, rather than publishing papers all along the way and having the technology, again, be more spread out, he just sort of worked away until he had multiple advances all at once. Fine, not impossible, just not the way things typically happen. It'd be unusual. But let's say that happened. Then what would happen? He would show it to the scientific world. They would evaluate it. It would go through the meat grinder of peer review. And if it actually worked, if you actually were onto something, you would see multiple people replicating his work. And then his equipment would be improved upon and would become standard equipment in every biology lab.
Yeah.
Why doesn't every lab have a Royal Rife microscope with those incredible levels of magnification?
It's probably because they want everybody to fucking die.
There's a simple answer: because the thing doesn't work. It's this ridiculous kludge. I don't know how he thought it was supposed to work, but it doesn't actually work. So that's why it went nowhere. It was a dead end. It couldn't be replicated. It didn't do anything useful. It turns out it was just more hallucinations than anything else. He thought he was seeing vibrating organisms, but he really wasn't. It was just artifactual. It's like the N-rays of physics. It was the same story where French scientists thought that they discovered N-rays. Turns out they were just fooling themselves, and for that reason, under properly controlled conditions, it couldn't be replicated, and it died away. That's why you've never heard of N-rays. They don't exist. By the same token, Royal Rife's machine doesn't work, and all of the things that derive from it are not true. They're not reality. You can't just come up with the magic frequency of an invading organism and destroy it with these frequencies. That doesn't exist. We don't treat infections this way because it doesn't work, because it's not real. And therefore what happens is people who don't understand the normal process of science and are not able to evaluate things in a more objective way, they just like the idea that this crazed maverick scientist came up with this fantastic invention. They have to invent a conspiracy, right? Then you have to say, well, scientists didn't want to make this discovery because they wanted to protect the profits of their friends in the medical field who wanted to prescribe drugs, or the pharmaceutical industry shut this down, or people are just so ready to believe that these monolithic organizations are able to exert such incredible control. It's just ridiculous. By the time anyone figured out that there was a therapeutic application to a technology like this, the basic physics and the basic science and the engineering and the technology would have been out there. There would have been 100 labs able to make these microscopes before anyone could prove that it was some kind of, it could be leveraged as in a therapeutic way. And there would be no way for anyone to shut it down or to create some kind of conspiracy of silence. If, right now we're struggling, with the antibiotic resistance. And if we had a non-antibiotic way of killing infectious organisms, it would be wonderful. You also have to ask yourself, in the last 50 plus years, why hasn't, if that invention is based on real science, real physics, why hasn't it been rediscovered? Well, why is the guy such a genius that even 50 years later, knowing what he did, no one is able to reproduce those microscopes or that phenomenon?
Okay, my blood's boiling. Let me show you and introduce you to Professor Yoram Palti, who was awarded Israel's prize for groundbreaking cancer treatment, because it kind of looks like Nikola Tesla, this poor guy's fucking technology. And it looks like the Zionist agenda is really promoting frequencies that look exactly like that crank Royal Rife's. Let me show you some more. What is the frequency device that costs almost $30,000 a month if you want to prolong your life? Let's see about it. Let's see what these people say about Rife frequencies.
Well, today marks a first in bringing attention to the most aggressive form of brain cancer. It is the inaugural Glioblastoma Awareness Day. People diagnosed with that brain tumor are often given a life expectancy prognosis that's measured in months, not years. Eyewitness News Health Beat reporter Mark Hiller is here to explain. Mark?
Nick, that's the case of a Williamsport man who worried about his own prognosis, but he's defying the odds with the help of electricity.
I enjoy coming over here to the boat.
61-year-old Scott Ryder wears on the top of his head what he considers a lifesaver.
I try to wear it constantly. I think if I'm not wearing it, then it's not helping.
The device is called Optune, a wearable therapy he started using after his April 2017 brain surgery and chemotherapy and radiation that followed. A doctor told Ryder he had 18 to 24 months to live, but now 27 months post-surgery.
This has extended life expectancy by months, if not years, by simply wearing the device.
Optune consists of 4 patches of electrodes attached to a patient's shaved scalp. It creates low-intensity wave-like electric fields called tumor-treating fields, delivered by transducer arrays to where the glioblastoma tumor is located.
And these arrays produce a beam, pulse, if you will, back and forth, constantly.
The electrical fields disrupt cancer cells which try to divide. Ryder has been going every other month for MRIs to monitor the tumor.
Ideally, it'd be shrinking, but it's not growing, and that's the biggie. It's not growing, it's stable.
While Ryder no longer works, he manages to stay active and enjoy some of his favorite activities.
I still downhill ski. I have showed up at the hockey rink and just played around.
He also gets to play with his grandson and take each day as it comes. Ryder hopes the success he's experienced with Optune gives others hope.
A grim diagnosis such as a malignant brain tumor can be, I don't think overcome, but it can be definitely lived with in a positive manner.
He's quite an inspiration. Optune, by the way, is FDA approved and covered by many insurances. Its maker, Novacure, has used the device in clinical trials to treat non-small cell lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, and mesothelioma. With the Health Beat, Mark Hiller, Eyewitness News.
I would shave my dad's head every other day and put those things on his head. And while he was wearing that device, the cancer did not spread. And then they wrapped him into this fucking experimental shit at some cancer treatment center in Pittsburgh, Hillman. And I tell you what, that machine really seems to work at stopping the glioblastomas from spreading. But he's not wearing that anymore. And he's not doing too good. Let's see about Optune's stock. Let's see how profitable this shit is. Well, let's watch this one first I have lined up.
Therapy has been developed called Optune, and this is what's referred to as tumor treating fields. And essentially what it requires is to have small currents of electricity running through the brain. So somebody will have 16 electrodes placed on their brain, these giving very small currents of electricity. They're connected to a battery, and somebody has to wear this battery 18 hours a day. We don't really know how it works. It has been proposed that the electric currents actually interfere in some way with how the cells divide. And obviously, as a tumor grows, the cells divide and the tumor expands. There's some evidence that this actually works. There have been some clinical trials which suggest that particular patients may benefit. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to determine whether this will be suitable and indeed for which patients it will be most appropriate and that they will benefit from the actual therapy.
So, I can't find a difference at all between Rife frequencies and the frequencies coming out of this Optune device. But what I can find is motherfuckers like this who would rather play stupid and say, we don't really know how it works, than say, we ripped off Dr. Royal Rife's machine and the Zionists' agenda got it the way they got the rest of the medical field, the way they got the fucking education system, and the way they have our government. Now to the stocks. Cancer and illness should not be fucking profitable. This is where capitalism really fucking sucks.
I recently called out Novacure as one of my top 5 favorite growth stocks for 2022. Why? Here's everything you need to know about the business. My name is Brian Feraldi.
And my name is Brian Stoffel.
Thanks to StockCard.io for sponsoring today's video.
Brian, Novacure is a $7 billion company that trades under the ticker symbol NVCR. The company's mission statement is to extend survival in some of the most aggressive forms of cancer by developing and commercializing innovative therapy. That's a mouthful, but it's also an inspirational mission.
Novacure is a medical device company that is focused on fighting cancer, specifically tumorous cancer cells. The company's founders discovered more than 20 years ago that electric fields can be used to target and kill cancerous tumors. Almost sounds like magic when you first learn about it. You wear this device called Optune on your head, and it emits electric fields. Those electric fields go to work disrupting cell division only in cancerous tumors. Importantly, this technology has already been FDA approved for 2 different conditions: glioblastoma multiforme, which is brain cancer, and mesothelioma, which is cancer of the internal organ tissues. Now, this might sound like magical experimental technology, but it's on the market. Patients have been using this for years, and it's widely reimbursed, including by Medicare. So this technology actually works.
The 2 key things to know about Novacure's business model is that it functions as a direct-to-patient model, and the company is paid on a per-patient, per-month basis.
Because of that, a key metric that affects this company's financials is what's called global active patients. This is the number of active patients that are using the company's technology. We want to see this number continue to go up and to the right, which it has for many years.
Now, because this is a relatively new technology, the customer acquisition costs can be high as the company tells others what its technology can do.
However, once it finds those customers, their spending is nearly recession-proof, and 100% of the company's revenue is recurring in nature.
Now, Novacure does benefit somewhat from high switching costs. That's because these devices have been shown to slow the growth of cancer, but only while they're being used. Once a patient starts using it, the switching costs become very high to stop using it.
And while the company's brand name might not be all that well known, this company benefits from FDA approval, and it has a number of patents that protect its technology from competitors.
Now, we gave Novacure high marks for counter positioning, but this one is worth explaining. The company's technology cannot and should not.
It's funny. They rip off Rife frequencies, and then you see that jack off from my first video saying, oh, if that worked, everybody'd be doing it. Well, unfortunately, the Zionists, they patented it. Technology that was not theirs. So that you have to go through them if you want a little bit of fucking help.
Should not be used to replace chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. But the fact that it doesn't compete with these, we think actually adds a moat around the business because it's complementary.
And we think Novacure's moat is widening as the number of patients around the world that use this technology continues to grow.
Now, looking at Novacure's top-line growth, it's been relatively impressive at a 29% annualized clip. It's worth no...
And then it's like, they keep making all this shit in labs to make us sick because they don't want everybody to realize the real epidemic that is fucking cancer everywhere. Everywhere I look, or people suffering because somebody or they have cancer because of the fucking poison that they're putting in our food. it is so hard sometimes to not wake up and choose fucking violence. It really is. When you start to understand how fucking sick the controllers of this fucking fake-ass Matrix world are. This Anunnaki hell world that we're living in. Not only is it so shocking having to deal with the reality of fallen angelics and reptilians, if you don't yet know, controlling the Abrahamic branch especially. It is so shocking having to go through this fucking information alone, let alone having to deal with your entire fucking family, thinking that you're the crazy one because they're zombies, right? And then watching your dad have to go down the fucking toilet. It is so hard. So hard to not choose violence. I could flip fucking tables. I could kick down doors. I mean, I'm trying so hard to alchemize some of my fucking rage, and I can't figure out how to do it.
Notice, however, that growth has recently slowed down.
One of the reasons I personally love looking at medical device companies is they typically tend to be high margins. That's definitely the case here, as Novocure's gross margin is over 79%.
Novocure has shown that it can be net income profitable. However, it has made the decision to invest in its future and therefore has lost money on a GAAP basis over the last 12 months. However, its free cash flow hoard has been growing.
The company's balance sheet is in decent shape with almost twice as much cash as there is debt.
And because of that reinvestment, its returns on capital are currently negative.
Novocure was founded more than 20 years ago by Dr. Yoram Palti. He has since retired from the company's board.
However, it's worth noting that Asif Danziger, the current CEO, has been at the helm pretty much since the start, and he's been there for 20 years in that role.
The company's Glassdoor ratings are pretty good, and they have been improving in recent years.
The company's insider ownership took a hit when Palti retired from the board. However, it's still at 4.6%, which is about $320 million at the time of this recording.
Now, if there was one and only one reason to invest in Novocure, it would be because of the company's optionality. The company has been investing aggressively into its pipeline in order to take its technology and move into new types of cancer. This slide is a little bit old, but it shows the enormous potential ahead of Novocure if it can successfully move into other types of cancer. On the near-term horizon are brain metastases and lung cancer, which have vastly larger patient populations than the company's current indication.
Now, as we already talked about, the company has chosen to be net income negative while it invests in its future, meaning it's in the red. However, we believe there's tons of room for operating leverage moving forward.
Pegging down the company's total addressable market opportunity is tricky. Some estimates we see suggest it's around $13 billion, of which it's captured about 4%. However, that number will grow substantially if Novocure can win FDA approval in those additional indications.
And the revenue growth here is largely organic, taking a new and proven technology and applying it to new cancers.
Novocure stock has been a great investment ever since it came public, and it has thumped the market over the last 5 years. And that's despite regularly missing Wall Street's estimates.
And given the fact that Novocure is in the growth stage, it's not surprising to see that the company is not returning money to shareholders in any form.
Believe it or not, but Novocure is literally the only company on the planet that is focused on commercializing tumor-treating fields. In that sense, the competition is essentially irrelevant.
Dilution is not super high, but it's something to be aware of because the company is using stock-based compensation to bring on and retain key employees.
We think the risk of Novocure being disrupted is very low, and if it was disrupted, that likely meant that cancer was cured, which is a disruption that I would be perfectly happy to take on.
If you're not someone who's worked in the medical field like myself, understanding what the company does can be somewhat difficult.
If I had to boil down Novocure's risk to one thing, it would be FDA approval. This is very much going to treat it like a biotech stock. If it wins FDA approval, the stock should soar. If it does not win FDA approval, the stock should sink.
I should probably go find a more up-to-date one. Maybe that's what I'll do next when I start digging into the fucking company that is Novocure and when I find out who the fuck owns it.
I think the odds are favorable, but that is definitely the number one risk for investors to watch.
And Brian, the market largely agrees with you. It believes that it will gain FDA approval. One way that we know that is that the stock is valued at over 12 times sales and over 60 times free cash flow.
So what should investors watch moving forward? The number one thing is the company's pipeline. A bet on Novocure is a bet on its pipeline first and foremost. If it wins FDA approval, the stock's going to soar. If it does not, look out below.
Second, once it does win that approval, we need to see that new customers are using the product.
And while we wait for that to happen,
new customers. These are not customers. These are people's family and their patients. They are sick.
the company's net income is likely to remain in net loss territory as it funds its late-stage pipeline. This number is going to bounce around, but eventually we want to see profits moving in one direction, up. So how did Novocure score on our investing checklists? For me, this company got a 74. That number used to be higher. However, more recently, this company has been missing Wall Street's estimates.
And on my framework, this got a 9.5, which is in my investable range and is a very good score for a company that's this small and heavily reliant on FDA approval for its future.
All right, Brian, both of our checklists give this company the thumbs up, so it's time to hold ourselves accountable. To do so, we're going to head on over to stockcard.io and put this company into both of our thumbs up portfolios. For you, that's called the anti-fragile portfolio. So I'm going to scroll down to new orders. I'm going to type in the company's ticker, which is NVCR. I'm going to do a buy decision. Today's date is Monday, January 24th, 2022. It's a $63 stock, so we're going to be buying about 16 shares. And the score for you was 8.5. I'm going to do submit. Then I'm going to head over to my portfolio, which is the Brian for All the Equality checklist, and I'm going to do the exact same thing.
And while Brian does that, we want to remind folks that you can come over to stockcard.io and enter our Beat the Brian.
All right, that's it. It's the end of that video, and I don't have a lot of time. To any of my relatives or anybody who knows me or my family or my dad personally, please do me a fucking favor one fucking time. I've seen in my birth chart, in my Vedic information, and all of these things that I am a manifesting generator type person, which means that I have a higher chance than some, especially ones who are not aware of what they're capable of here. I have a slightly higher chance of being able to manifest good. And my family, this whole entire time, I have been asking them to please look at anything I have put in front of you and please explain to my dad that you might not believe what I'm saying, but please look and maybe talk to him about how I might not be all that crazy, because there is so much information. I have gathered up so many doctorate holders and so many scientists and people talking about all of the things that I'm talking about. And please help salvage our fucking relationship. I am the closest one to my dad. I am with him at the hospital down at Shadyside. Oh fuck, I didn't realize I was being fucking reflected. I'm with him every night because I don't want him to be scared or alone. And you guys have done fucking nothing. Nothing I asked. I even promised that if my family didn't fucking look and didn't want to choose to not be zombified anymore, that I'd dox everybody. I call motherfuckers out by name. Every one of my family members call them out by name on my channel. Because I'm sorry. It's time to spiritually wake up and remember who the fuck God is, and remember that this is just one layer of sleep. And it's time to wake up, and I'll drag you by your fucking hair. I really will. I will drag my family by their fucking hair. If that's what it takes. But do me a favor once. Pretend that no matter what you fucking think is going on here, pretend that no matter how crazy you think I am talking about my soul contracts and talking about having two consciousnesses, two fucking souls, pretend that this is a fucking nightmare world. Pretend for 1 minute that outside of this world, we are all one. We are all equal to God, the real one, source. And we're all just stuck in this shithole, asleep. This is a layer of sleep, just like the movie Inception. This is why Hollywood gets away with the shit they get away with. Because it's their fucking job to make you think that what you're watching in the films is sci-fi and not real life. This world looks like not the very lowest level in the movie Inception, but pretty fucking close. And when you wake up, when you die, you wake up. And please try to imagine those glioblastomas in his brain that have spread everywhere. Look like a bunch of fucking Cthulhu's up in there. It's like you can visibly see the Cthulhu's in his mind instead of, the invisible ones in everybody else's. Imagine them retracting. You can see these things spread like waves, and they have spread everywhere. And we don't have much left to lose, guys. So please, play pretend with me. And imagine those fucking tumors retracting. Like, you have to really be the architect in your mind. You have to really focus and imagine looking at that MRI. And imagine the cancer going back, coming back in. Imagine a world where he makes, because my family doesn't realize how strong it is. And if my family would please just fucking come together, don't give up. Imagine him being okay. Please. I need help. I can't combat everything in this fucking world by myself. And I can't combat this fucking cancer by myself. But if you guys would fucking get your minds right and realize how strong you are and how strong our family is, I think he might really have a chance. I really do. But if you guys don't, I don't know how that goes. I really need you to please fucking play pretend with me. That's it.